we can start going, and if people join us, they'll pick it up. So that's the panel that we'll be discussing the topic today. We just introduced ourselves and the way in which we are going to run through the content today is we'll start with the context. Why are we talking about decoupling? What is it? What are the opportunities linked to it? How does tokenization play a role in achieving it? Showing some examples to illustrate what that can look in practice, and we'll leave ample time for Q&A, as this position paper is very much a conversation starter, and the idea is to enrich it through the conversations that we can have around. So let's dive right in the context. Why do we need decoupling? Why is that relevant? Well, the important point is before the COP last year in December, the International Panel for Climate Change released their annual sort of stock take on where the world is in its journey towards avoiding the worst effect of climate change. And the Paris Agreement had set a target to remain around 1.5 degrees of warming compared to pre-industrial level by the end of this century. And according to the latest report from this UN body, we're on track to be at 2.5. So we are missing quite a lot in terms of ambition and action. And one of the key challenges that we see for companies that are based on making and selling goods is that currently their economic development is in sort of tension with their environmental agenda, whereby today, if you're a goods company, you grow by making and selling more products. And in that, it's even if you manage to reduce the marginal impact of your products, that is rapidly offset by the growth in the number of units that you put on the market. And so the idea of decoupling is to find strategies for companies to continue creating economic opportunities, while also at the same time reconciling those with their environmental agenda and helping have a sort of economic curve that keeps on growing and being positive, while seeing the volumes that are being produced in retail sort of like going down or at least staying steady. So that's a sort of very emerging topic. Not all the answers are available, and we don't claim to have all the answers, but through this research and thanks to the input of a dozen experts and practitioners in the space, we've been able to outline a number of strategies that can help reach this decoupling. The first one is around product circulation. So the circular business models that have been in focus for a number of years around repairing, reselling, remanufacturing product, basically finding ways to multiply revenue opportunities for the product, while also making sure that it can stay in use for as long as possible. And for me, the second part of this was maybe where it was more interesting to start sort of shaping it and articulating a little bit the opportunities in this space, where there's this completely non-product based revenue opportunity around services. And we bundle those value-added services in three areas. The first one is around services that can add value to the circulation of the product. Here we're talking about, extended warranties, servicing contracts, rental. The other one is around how can we add value to the product over time. So that can be through upgrades, performance add-ons, provision of relevant content. And the last one, and I think, Olga, that's where we will rely on your expertise, and we're very thankful that you could be with us today, is complete dematerialization. So really not even, or very loosely linked to a product, around virtual goods, digital twins. So my first question for you, Olga, is this is probably something that's not necessarily familiar for a lot of people joining us today. So can you explain a little bit what this complete dematerialization is about, and share some examples of how with Dematerialized you've been working on this?
Absolutely, Francois. Thank you so much for inviting me to provide my input for this work and to be present at this webinar. DressX, as I mentioned at the beginning, started as an idea of the alternative solution for people to enjoy the beauty of the fashion industry. I like to say that I want people to think about their wardrobe as the hybrid model, and it's not something what you can wear only and take only from the shelf of your physical closet, but it's also something which you can wear in the digital space. And talking about the digital space, it's wearing, for example, on your photos, or using augmented reality filters. We all know about Snap, for example, or Instagram filters. So extend that idea to the clothes which you can wear, and then having the avatar fashion and avatars entering into our space, like in social media with Meta. We have avatars in Instagram, we have avatars in WhatsApp, we have Roblox where kids spend time. So all these spaces where we can be present and where we can express ourselves with what we are and show ourselves to the public, we can use clothes there, we can use digital garments there. So I would like people and the consumers and customers think about their wardrobe and think beyond the physicality. So the first idea of the first product which we show as the startup at DressX was wearing digital items on the photos. So you have, so we work, for example, with existing designers, existing physical clothes, which we transform into the digital space. We create the 3D model of this item, and we can dress this item on your photo. So at the beginning, you have your old photo, and then with the DressX dressing, you get the same photo, but with absolutely new outfit. And it was during the COVID time when everyone was sitting home. And for the content creators, it was a great tool to change their photo shoots images into something absolutely new, just because it's a very cool tool for the content creators. And what we say to the consumers, so yeah, to follow the trends and to be present in the social media in front of your followers, you don't need to go to the store and to buy a new clothes, which you will probably wear just only once to appear in front of the camera and create a piece of content. You can enjoy the beauty of the fashion. You can follow the trends with digital fashion.
Yeah.
And as a chief sustainable, yeah.
No, sorry. Yeah, no, it's a great way to sort of reconcile that sort of trend with customer and provide those opportunities to look good and still minimizing the impact. And I guess Pierre-Nicolas, the conversation on decoupling really started also from a brainstorm we had on the side of an event. So I wanted to also hear from you what are some of the elements in this report, but also in decoupling that are very fundamental to your approach with INEM that you've been reflecting on.
So just a disclaimer, okay? I'm gonna bring you back to some more down-to-earth and very pragmatic perspectives. You know, when you look at some of the products that can generate the most waste, and obviously fashion is part of it, but we also talk about the weave, the WEEE, product that can generate so electronic and white products, appliances that can generate a lot of waste. You start thinking about really the need to change the model. And I think the very introduction that you gave about the goals of the Paris Agreement and the urgent need for change in economic model should first drive us to look at very concrete ways just to keep things longer and to fight programmed obsolescence. And so, even though product circulation is really the bottom of this pyramid, I think there's so much to do. And sometimes when we want to go towards what can be new, what can be more, what can be exciting, we forgot that there's a lot to work on the foundations of this pyramid. Repair is something that happens when something is broken. You can start by producing things that last long and help people take good care of them. So even before repair, we could talk about self-maintenance. How do I make sure that what I have, I'm going to keep it longer? And this what I have can be a clothes that you can today take a good care of, or that can be an appliance or a car or any kind of long-lasting good. So the first thing would be, okay, how do we encourage, how brands can encourage users to take better care of their products and make money at the same time? Because that's the paradox. That's where we sit. Why would I, if I'm a manufacturer of a product, why would I push someone to keep it longer if I don't have an economic incentive? And so that's where the first layer of the pyramid around servicing contracts becomes really interesting. And if you some of you live in France, you might have seen the program from Darty that is called the Darty Max, where you can, for a monthly fee, have unlimited repairs on your goods at home. And so that's very interesting, because a Darty, who's supposed to be someone who's here to sell more goods, is now telling you, why don't you buy less? And why don't you buy a service that will help you keep them longer? But when they start doing that, their first question is now, yeah, but we don't want this repair to happen too often, because it's going to cost money. And so we want to keep people engaged. So we're going to push them to take better care of their product. And by doing this, we're also going to increase the surface of contact between this user and the brand. When you have something and you just wait for it to break, it's not a great relationship with the brand, when you just wait for the moment there's a problem. So if there's a continuous relationship framed inside a servicing contract, that's going to help you take better care of your product and then push back the moment you need to repair them, because if you need to repair, there's been a problem. That's a very interesting way to look at how it is possible to monetize a service and to engage in a different kind, much more positive relationship with users based on avoiding this repair, which is kind of a paradox. So that's very interesting. Then there's resale. Obviously, resale today is a market that is highly growing, and I don't have all the stats, but whether you look at electronics, appliances, or fashion, the revenue, the total revenue made on the secondary market is like growing in an exponential way. But most of the time, brands and manufacturers and retailers they are not involved in this. So the value goes to other players, and if there's something to recapture here, would brand and retailers be able to offer a service that comes with enough value that will make the resale so easy and seamless and trustless that they can actually hope to make money out of this? I think that's a very interesting thing to explore, even though we see that brands and retailers have a tendency to say, yeah, we're here to manufacture and sell goods, their circulation is not on our agenda. And this is a big shift in mindset that we need to be pushing forward.
And I think that creates a nice transition to the second part, actually, of the report, which is, in order to be able to create that shift in mindset, but also to better align the incentives of the different actors that you mentioned between, brands, platforms, policymakers, but also their customers. What we did is explore the role of tokenization in achieving that, and in also helping to maintain that connection between the brand or the OEM and its successive users over time. So maybe the first question I have for you, Pierre-Nicolas, is, what is tokenization? What are we talking about?
Well, let's make this very simple. it is basically creating a database of these products that is open. It's an open data infrastructure. It is a common, it's making the data about these products a common good. But when you create an entry in a database in a centralized system, you necessarily choose your own rules. You're going to define something that is specific to you. So by design, it's going to be less able to cooperate with the outside. On the other end, when you create something inside your system, you're going to first want to protect it, protect the entire system from potential attacks from outside. It's the basics of cybersecurity. And so when we want to create data about products, if we do it in a centralized way, we do it just, brands can do it just for themselves. Tokenization means creating data about products on an open does not mean not without any privacy, does not mean completely without rules, but based on an open framework where interoperability is possible. So what does that mean? That means that you enable the user with the data about a product that is going to be able to communicate with the outside. That third parties can read, that is transferable, where you can write on this data that something happened, that a repair happened, for example, and certified stakeholders can write, can read. So it's a very behind this weird world called tokenization. It's just the idea of for durable goods where we want to avoid waste and when we want to increase the lifespan and create value across the life of the product. It's the idea that the product data, the product database is going to be interoperable and open and allow for stakeholders to cooperate and create value.
Yeah, and I think what you say in terms of open doesn't mean that anyone can access all the data, that you can put some boundaries in terms of who can read and write on it is a really important part of the conversation. And I think one of the things that we saw in the work is that by creating this sort of data infrastructure, you're able to better align the incentives and of actors across the system who today are slightly misaligned. Right? Brands want to sell more, customers want to keep for longer, policymakers are trying to change the system. So on the next slide, we've tried and show some of the changes that are happening and how this tokenization can help realign. So in a way, you've got brands who can better demonstrate compliance to regulators because all of a sudden the data is available and they can, in the design of this database, allow regulators to access only the information that are relevant to them. On the other side, they can also maintain a degree of, as you said, proximity and connection to their customers and create longer lasting revenue opportunities with them, but also intimacy opportunities. And on the other side, regulators want to make sure that the majority of the people are happy with the green transition, that they are buying into it and feel better out of it. And so through the system, they can push for more repairability, more resale, etc., knowing that it's easier for people to participate into it. Are there any sort of additional illustration from your work, Pierre-Nicolas, that you want to highlight?
Really, the question of the revenue growth is really going to be critical, because we're talking here about a real change of model, a real change of business model. And today, what might be hard for brands is really to imagine to grow revenues without selling more. So how can we prototype services and start working now on prototyping the services and verifying through MVPs that it is possible? And obviously, when you see I'll go back to the Darty example. The revenues of Darty Max are like incredible. This is really, really interesting. Can we do that on other for other industries? Maybe it's going to be a little bit harder. It might be a little bit harder for a handbag or a dress or a pair of jeans to have the same kind of service-based model than what you have on an appliance. But why not? And what I would say here is like, obviously, if we want these possibilities to become available, it's fair to imagine that brands can't be the only players to have to support the development of these services. And that's also the great thing about an open infrastructure, is that it allows for, at a certain level of scale, for a network effect, where different actors are going to enter the platform, where identities will be verified, where apps can be developed, adding value for the end user. If we just think that the sole responsibility bears on brands, that's very hard. And so that gives another good reason to create an open infrastructure and put this data, make this data a common good. It's because you want this network effect to happen, and you want these apps to be developed for the benefits of end users and brands. So that's a very important thing. And I'll just come back a second on this notion of privacy. An open infrastructure, we talk about public blockchain. Sometimes when we say the word public, people think that the data is on the blockchain. It's not true. There's no data on the blockchain. On blockchain, you just have hashes. You just have things that are encrypted. The data is always the metadata, the data of the passport. The data is always stored on the side, on the cloud. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it is today possible to secure critical information, like the volume of production of a given good, for example, can stay safe and secret for the brand, and the brand can only decide to show that to the regulator, for example, but not to its competitors. Also, for the final user, you don't necessarily want everyone to know what you have in your garage or in your kitchen or in your closet. So the capability to hide individually the content of a token is very important. And so it's very, very critical to look at this with the different elements in mind. Public does not mean without privacy. Open and auditable does not mean that it is an open book where everyone can read. And all of that to create the necessary and expected value needs scale and network effect.
And one of the things, Olga, that we discussed was also that speaking of those opportunities to create better connections and the opportunities that arise from intermediaries, is this idea of connecting a product to a virtual twin, and to create new opportunities for engagement, storytelling, etc. Can you share more about some of the work that you've been doing in that space?
I'm sorry, is it for me, the question?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, absolutely. And this is what I was trying to jump in this conversation about tokenization. I absolutely see the new business models which can come up, having the digital twin of the existing item. And the very first one, especially when we start talking about NFTs, came up. Like, let's imagine that you have a luxury brand which wants to create a collection of a limited collection of, for example, handbags. And what they can do, they can start of the creation of this collection in the digital space. So you don't do the physical production, you don't spend the physical resources for this collection. And first of all, you sell this collection as a digital twin, let's say NFT, or within, like with any other tokenization which you can think about. But yeah, usually it would be, if you're talking about blockchain, it would be with NFT. And people start buying, they start owning these items, and you can provide them the opportunity to redeem the physical item, or you can say, okay, you can keep this NFT, you have this opportunity to redeem that physical item, that physical bag in some point of the time, but it's not like mandatory to do it straight away. And there are some collectors which might want to redeem and get the physical bag straight away, and you will do on-demand production, which means that you produce only what has been demanded. And like I say, you reduce the raw materials on this in this model. And there might be some collectors which would like to keep it, to have as an investment and resell it in a couple of years, and the next owner will decide if they want to redeem it or not. So in terms, for me, having these digital twins and go into this tokenization in terms of sustainability, it can help us to reduce the resources, raw materials, on the production, and change, again, we're changing the habit of the users, and we are giving the new notion to our customers that owning a digital asset can be as much valuable as owning a physical asset. And if you want to get this physical asset, you have this opportunity to redeem it and to get it, and it will be produced on demand with less resources. So we are avoiding with this notion the overproduction, which is one of the problems of the fashion industry, and one of the reasons why we are getting the carbon footprint of the fashion industry increase, and the whole climate crisis. So this is one of the side of the tokenization. Another side, selling these digital tokens, digital twins, we can actually create some kind of the entry into the special club. And this is what we think this year about NFTs is about. So you are giving an entrance to your customers to some luxury private club. And with this, having this token, you can get more user engagement. You can propose additional utilities to this token, and it might not come up straight away, but with the building of the community, with the building of the relationship, you can understand that you might give the special access to some events or some sales, etc., to your customers. So it's the way how you can engage with the customer. So there are different benefits. Yes, it's provide some kind of the transparency how you do your business, especially if you attach the digital passport with the information, but it's way to push the sustainability, and it's also the way to engage, to increase the engagement with your community.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Olga. And I think now we reached the part of the webinar where we invite you to share some questions, any questions that you may have. We had more examples, but I'm sure we'll be able to cover those during the Q&A. But I want to make sure that in the 12 minutes that we have left, we can answer some questions. So if you want, you can either unmute yourself to ask a question or put it in the chat. Yep. I think one of the questions that I've heard a couple of times in discussing this topic is in a way the starting point. Like where can companies start on this journey? It can feel a bit nebulous. It can feel fairly challenging or even quite an expensive endeavor. So what are, Pierre-Nicolas and Olga, the experience that you have in where to start?
That's a very hard one. That's a very hard one because we're talking about something that creates value at scale. We're talking about services that will emerge from apps on a network of that requires a certain volume, and that's, I think that's kind of where we are with this with everything around the digital passport. There's a lot of confusion because many brands are making POCs and MVPs, and an MVP is almost dedicated to failure in a way because it is going to be small and the services are going to be limited and it's going to be hard to maintain, and so you enter a loop that is super hard to sustain. And that's what makes all of this a little hard until the regulator is not going to say, okay, this is for everything. And I think the eco design regulation was actually voted, I think, yesterday or today. So, this is really happening. There's no kind of way back on that. But between saying that today on May 28th, 2024, and the moment when every single durable good in the EU will have a digital passport, which is supposed to be 2030, knowing that most likely in many industries, lobbies will do how much as they can to push that back, including the fashion industry and and appliance industry, because the transition to a new model is not easy to do. So I would say, the first thing is acceptance. You need to accept that there's no way back. You need to accept that every single of your products will have product information online. Then you need to wonder, okay, if that has to happen, then what's the best infrastructure to turn that constraint into a value opportunity that can help me build a change of model. And if you do that thoroughly and objectively, you'll most likely end up to the needs of interoperability, of openness, of auditability, of data sovereignty, which will lead you to a decentralized infrastructure. And then when you're there, it's going to happen, and that the infrastructure is most likely the best. The question should be, when should I stop? And that's where it's hard because of the relationship with time and short-term challenges. And so there's always something urgent. There's always something, before being on this journey, you need to save the day. You need to, deal with Chinese customers spending less and your e-com being less performant these days. And so you need leadership. You need leadership to be, in a way, a driver for change, and to understand that the sooner you start building the infrastructure and taking it to scale, the more value you'll get from it, and the sooner you'll get the value from it, besides the regulatory constraints. So it's not easy because, testing is a way to test and to learn, but it's not a way to get good KPIs. And so it needs to be a strategic conversation.
I agree with Pierre-Nicolas, and what we are doing right now with digital fashion, with tokenization, with bringing like digital passports, is that we're changing actually the way we consume. We change our habits, we change the habits of the consumers, and also the brands, how they do their business, and we're showing them the new ways, the new economy. But at the moment, it's still not at that scale where you can get the revenue streams. It's still kind of the R&D R&D or investment into the future. And not every brand at the moment is ready to do this investment. So I guess I would agree with Pierre-Nicolas saying that, yes, the brands have to accept that their future customers right now are somewhere in the digital spaces. And if they want them to be recognized, they have to talk with these future customers right now. That yes, there are regulations about the digital password, so you have to start earlier to enter in that, while the prices is like at this level, and being the pioneers to create the best practices. So I guess this is like the challenging moment for a lot of brands and for us, for the companies who is pushing for that. But we will come to that point where we will change the industries, we will change the habits. And this is like the beauty of what we are doing right now.
Yeah, and I think for brands, there's a few questions to ask in terms of, what's your current relationship with your customer, where is the value that they get the most, and sort of like starting with some of the frameworks that we share in the paper, to start mapping a little bit the sort of overlaps between their brand identity, how people relate to them, and where the different opportunities are in the space, and then to go on from there and ask themselves, how do they want to enter those different markets, whether it's in partnership, working with an intermediary, how do they want to develop it, what technology they want to use, as you said, Pierre-Nicolas. So yeah, I think starting by structuring the problem, asking the right questions, and really starting from where the brand is currently strong is really critical to success.
I have something to add here about.
I think we have there's a question in the chat. I would like to answer how to ensure seamless integration between a tokenized infrastructure and existing systems. It's a very important one, because there are things that should never leave a centralized system. There are things that are made before production, that are purely linked to internal processes that are not made to be shared. And there's a good reason for this data to exist and to be protected and to be centralized. And then once it exists, the question would be, but why would I have to duplicate this data? It's now in my system. And I would say there's a very good reason for that. It's because the moment you're going to want to empower your user with this data, just having it at the same place where you have your secrets and your sauce and your recipes is not the good place. The menu of the restaurant is not the recipe book. At some point, you publish the menu and you put it in the hand of the user. So yes, you duplicate some of what's in the recipe book, but it's not for the same use. And so accepting that things have to make sure in a data protected environment, and then to be put on an open data infrastructure is necessary if you want to empower users and an ecosystem to leverage this data, to be compliant, obviously, but also to create value. So I would say that the first thing about this successful integration is to accept the existence of both, accept the idea that the recipe book is not the menu, and accept that if you want to empower external people with data, you need a specific place for that cannot be your system, because you can't have all the time requests to access your internal information system just for basic cybersecurity reasons, but also for efficiency, energy efficiency, and interoperability challenging.
Super. Olga, did you have additional thoughts that you wanted to share?
Yes, it was as a continuation to what you were saying, that adaptation of the digital passwords. We had a conversation just some time ago with people in the industry, and we were discussing, so for example, you as a user, would you like, for example, you bought some item, and let's say more like luxury or something, and you keep it for some time, and then you have all the information about you, when you bought it, how much was it cost, and maybe not your exactly name, but some kind of the encrypted information, but basically you have the information which can be traceable about when you bought it and how much it was cost, and you want to resell it in a couple of years. And if the market goes not so well and this brand is not so great and the prices are going down or going up, would you like the future owner to see the whole history of the prices of this item, a bag or anything, like any item you wanted to sell, the piece of clothes, or not? And as far as I understand, a lot of customers don't want to show that previous history. They don't want to share how much did they pay for this item previously. They just have the current price they want to sell, but they don't want the other users, the next owner, to see all this history. So this is just like saying that, yes, we want to be everything traceable and to be everything for others to see, but maybe we are not yet ready. The users are not ready, and they're not yet there.
No, Olga, we don't want everything to be, like, I don't know anyone working on product passports adding the price, the original price to the passport. And obviously the regulator is not going to ask for that. The question is, what are the key elements about the product, the serial number, the way it's been made, maybe the way you've taken care of it with the most relevant things, maybe the number of previous owners. But I would agree to say that the price is something that is so relative. You take the price of a Moncler jacket in China, in the US, and in France, and in outlets. And then the very same Maya jacket already has 5 prices like today on May 28th. So, I don't think the price is something that is that should be part. And that's a very important point. What's the minimum viable content that should be part of a passport? What kind of events should be recorded for the good of the emergence of new business models?
Yes, exactly. To make this information valuable, but at the same time to keep the value of the item itself. So there are some things which we need to understand, to test, and to understand what consumer value more and what is important.
Great. We have one last question it's not the easiest one. What service model could most benefit from tokenization? Let's use that as a closing thought.
Look, I'm personally convinced that this is the second hand. I really think that that's where there's the maximum potential of value for the original user, value for the next buyer, value for the brand, who can monetize this if they support the service well enough, and tokenizing is a good way to support the service. And then we did not even touch on the incredible potentials that on-chain infrastructure can give to payment settlement and trusted identities. And so this is just the beginning. We sometimes just look at this digital passport as a thing, but when you add to that all the possibilities of cryptography and tokenized infrastructures, there are amazing business models with a lot of value for everyone. And I think we have a last question. Come in, Julian.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I didn't want to type it in because it might be a little bit long, but I think, Pierre-Nicolas, it's going to be a question for you. What struck me first when you were talking about the resistance of certain lobbies and obviously certain brands, right? And I think one of the reasons, at least intuitively, comes from the fact that in most of the cases, especially when we're talking white products, but it might apply as well to luxury products, is that we are in a B2B2C environment, right? So the customer of those brands is the distributor, is the Darty, is the multi-brand retailer, and so on and so forth. And the customer of Darty, obviously, is the end consumer. So there is kind of a misalignment of the incentives. And when I look at it from an innovation perspective, at the end of the day, what happens very often, again, intuitively, is that innovation comes from new players or new intermediaries trying to bring breakthrough value to the end consumer, right? You were talking about secondhand. This would come from eBay. This would come from Vestiaire Collective, and never from the brands themselves. I can't recall any example of a brand that is actively, for example, managing its secondhand business. So my question to you is, how can we use tokenization and digital product passports, not trying to leverage brands, but potentially those multi-brand players as Darty, as, let's say, focal point or entry point to foster the usage of this technology that I think we all believe, as we are here, is breakthrough and will help us reach those goals, and as well directly bring value, well, both to the business and to the final consumer. Have you considered that?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a very interesting point. I would just say that, you know, before specifically answering, at some point there will be no choice. There are enough clothes on this planet for the 9 next generations. So there's not need to be one more clothes created. There's no reason why a refrigerator lasts 6 years and not 12 or 15. So the problem is, if we keep the temperature increase below 2 degrees, and let's be clear, 2 degrees is going to be critical. There are tons of places in the world at 2 degrees more where you can't live. There are massive amount of population displaced. And to keep the temperature increase below 2 degrees, we would need to reduce our emissions by, I think, 5 to 10% every year systematically, which means that we need one COVID every year. So when you face that, you probably realize that the regulator at some point might say stop. The regulator at some point might even constrain brands to produce less, which, you know, is something we can't imagine today, but facing the urgency and the level of the climate crisis, that might happen. So brands that are not taking this into account today and continue to think that they will always be able to produce more to grow, should consider that. That's the first thing. Then, obviously, you need to go through distributors, intermediaries, second-hand platforms. And for that, I think the direction is to stop identifying the digital passport only as something that has to be linked with authenticity. As long as the digital passport becomes an open data about a product, then it might be possible for the distributor to create it, even for someone organizing the industry. I don't know about second-hand players directly, but I think, and starting with us, which we've never been really open to that at our very early days, we need to make this possible. I totally agree.
I think if I might just react real quick, the issue is we know how regulators can be slow in implementing such new regulations, especially if we have strong lobbies. And the second thing is, I agree with you that fundamentally it's right. However, it's not in the interest of the brands. And the problem is that today the consumer makes the choice on the best value for him, whether it's in terms of price or in terms of feature or in terms of combination of both. If I'm me as a brand, I start implementing those, the only added value that I will offer at the end is some sort of consciousness, right? It's not a direct feature. So I'm going to be beaten by competitors. That's my issue. So or we have all brands synchronizing and advancing in the right direction, or we have new players, or we have existing brands that are going to take a huge risk as compared to the competitors. That was why I was thinking of, okay, maybe we need to rescale the problem, or, you know, refocus it on those ones that are indirect touch with the consumer, which is the intermediary, the darty, and so on, and which have proven to find some, profitable business models for them, as you were explaining at the beginning.
Yeah, and you're right, and the conclusion is also probably that you need other industries that fashion and luxury players to accelerate.
And given the sort of turmoil that's happening in the retail market, there's definitely an opportunity for reinvention and using those new services and technologies to find a fresher future. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to Pierre-Nicolas and Olga for sharing their perspective and expertise with us today. You can download the paper that we published last week using the QR code below, or the link that you can find on LinkedIn, on Ariane's website, or pretty much anywhere if you put the title. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.